which is oh, that's good. Which is situated in northeastern Ontario, and it's an Indigenous women's organization, and we do a lot of work on housing and homelessness, and that's kind of what my day job is. And then on the side, what I do is organize in municipalities, mainly in Ottawa, on seeing how can we get more locally organized, how can we pool expertise, knowledge, and lived experience from folks to get better living situations in municipal governments. But more importantly, how do we hold municipal governments accountable? Because I think those municipal governments tend to be the governments that tend to fly the most under the radar, while having the opportunity to create very real, immediate and urgent change in people's lives. So I just wanted to share learnings with folks today. I hope that this is a very informal session. I'm not really hoping for this to be presentation style at all. I have a Jamboard created, and I'm hoping that throughout the session we can be interactive, and be talking to each other. I wish we had enough time to go around and do introductions, because I usually love getting to know who's in the room. But since we don't have that time, I do encourage folks to, if they do choose to speak, please do introduce yourself briefly, or we can always use the chat to introduce ourselves as well. And then I just also quickly wanted to make sure if there's any way that I can make this session more accommodate you in any way in this session, just let me know. Don't think the recording would be that loud. Oh, I'm so sorry, Aspen. I'm not sure what do you mean by that.
Just when it said recording in progress. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you there. It was just.
Oh, that's okay. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. I'm used to it now. There's nothing that happens on Zoom that surprises me anymore. Let's be honest. I'm on it 24/7. So yeah, so please do feel free to introduce yourself to each other, to me, and while you're talking. And I'm just really grateful to everybody who's part of today. And I'm just gonna share my screen if that's okay, and we can work through the rest of this session on Jamboard, which is also interactive, and it allows us to talk to each other through a virtual platform. And I see people were using Mural before anyway, so maybe that's just going to be easy, and folks are familiar with that anyway. So I'll just quickly jump into that. I'll do a little bit of talking, and then I promise that it's all interactive. Let me go find my first slide. So the name of my session, and I call the session Driving Accountability at Municipal Level, just because, as I said, of my experiences of being involved in municipal organizing in Ottawa and seeing the kind of difference and change it can make in policy, but in also keeping municipalities accountable to goals, opportunities that we would like to see in the cities that we live in. So I just wanted to start off with this title slide because I spent my winters traveling around, and I took pictures of some of my favorite art and murals in cities where folks are most involved. And I spent some time this winter in Barcelona where folks are deeply involved with the city that they're creating for themselves. It's a city where there's a lot of diverse populations. They have a huge population of migrants, documented and undocumented, that come through the Mediterranean. And they've organized themselves in unions, in groups, and it's visible all through the city in their art, where they're constantly representing who the city is for, and who are they fighting for. And I love that. And then the one in the top right corner here is from Montreal. And I spent some time in Montreal living there. And I used to live in Park Extension, which is currently going through a lot of gentrification. It's a low income, affordable neighborhood that recently saw University of Montreal campus come in vicinity, and now is getting gentrified by a lot of student housing and higher income housing. So murals and art in cities represents a lot about who the city is for, and how, what kinds of people are coming together and fighting to make the cities more livable. And this is one of the reasons why I just love seeing art around the city. And this is just something I wanted to share as I started. I also always start with a meme. So I'm encouraging folks, I'm assuming folks have been here for a little bit, but I'm encouraging folks to kind of write in the chat how they're feeling today. I'm at a solid 9 today. I've been working on a deadline all through this week, and it's been exhausting as hell. So I'm definitely at a solid 9, but please do share with me what you're feeling like. And it gives me a better sense of, write a number, and it gives me a better sense of what the room's like today. Maybe I'll just give a short couple of minutes. Oh, I see. Let's see. What numbers do I see here? Oh, somebody's feeling a 1. That's beautiful. I am sending you a lot of power and strength. Lots of 4s. I get that. I get that. Someone's a 10. I guess they're just not even on this map. And you're feeling a 7. I feel you. Somewhere Aspen's feeling a 3. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, folks, for sharing that. I see 4s and 3s and 7s, but whoever's feeling a 1 today, more power. And I hope for the rest of us, the day brings us to a 1. That we can hope for that. So I guess I'll just start off with giving a little bit of an introduction to what is it that I do in Ottawa. So I was part of a coalition in Ottawa, which was called the Ottawa Coalition for a People's Budget. And we had a very specific mandate to look at municipal budgets, policies in municipal budgets, track what's happening over time, and see where the city was spending. And then pooling groups, community organizations, lived experts, folks that have been involved in the city, and I'm sure there are many like that in Calgary as well, pooling those expertise together to build something like an alternative budget. And what exactly is an alternative budget? An alternative budget is this sort of a blue sky idea of what the city can look like if we were spending money on things that actually mattered to people that lived here. So it's really looking at, for Ottawa, obviously those priorities look different, and for us it's going to look different, and we can do that exercise a little bit later today. But it's really thinking through, why are we spending money on things that we are spending money on, and how could we spending money differently in the city, and what kind of difference is that going to make for people in the city. So we started off in 2020, which was the pandemic year, and we started off working with some groups that were working on transit, and some groups that were working on gendered issues, and some groups that were working specifically on racial justice in the city, and some groups that were working on climate, and we started pooling those expertise together, and we got everybody at the same table in a very non-hierarchical, decentralized way to think about what would it look like if we pooled our area of interests together and our priorities together, and looked at something that presented a larger vision for the city. And we deemed that the municipal budget was one of the best tools to do that. So I'm just going to do some graphics from last year's budget. So we had looked at something like housing, and looked at, if we were to propose progressive models of taxation, if we were to propose defunding of the police, if we were to propose money coming in from higher development charges, what could that lead to in real time for housing in the city? And one of the things that we looked at housing particularly was because Calgary has been a bit more sane, but housing in Ontario is completely out of control. And I do feel like this is kind of where Calgary is closely inching towards right now, as well. As we've seen recently, the market's going crazy, and we are seeing increased financialization. We are seeing gentrification in some of our neighborhoods in Calgary as well. So really, like, right now is the time that folks in Calgary can come together and think about what those priorities are for them. Where is it that they want to hold their municipal governments accountable? Housing was a really huge one in Ottawa, and when we put our minds together, we proposed this alternative budget, which was balanced, by the way, because municipal budgets have to be balanced. We saw that if we took away money from something like surveilling communities 24/7, you can actually put in money into something like a rent bank, which allows people to avoid evictions, which allows people to find immediate relief when they don't have money to pay rent. We looked at something like building new affordable housing units, and how much currently cities almost fully rely on federal and provincial governments for grants to build affordable housing. A very, very small pot of money comes from the city itself to build affordable housing. What we found through our budgeting exercise is cities can afford to build affordable housing if that's where they want to put their priorities, and they can be pushed into it. Ottawa, before I believe it was 2019, Ottawa really never had any monies put aside, new dollars put aside in their budgets to build affordable housing. There was a lot of advocacy done on the ground that made that shift in Ottawa. And that's something that folks in Calgary can look at it as well. Like, what are those pressure points for Calgary? I'm going to take more time. So this is where we looked at defunding the police budget, and this tends to be a more sticky topic, and it can be a contentious topic when you're bringing groups from all across the board together. But within the Ottawa context, we were able to look at it and figure out what is a realistic way to take monies away from surveillance, to take money away from criminalization and put it towards actual supports that make people's quality of life better. So we looked at looking at policing fines, we looked at looking at non-frontline, non-criminal investigative services, specifically for mental health calls, specifically for calls that don't necessarily require police. We looked at defunding and detasking frontline policing. Again, contentious topic, but that's something that we were able to agree on within the Ottawa context. And that's probably, it's going to look different in Calgary. And that's for people in Calgary to come together and think about what an exercise like this can look like in Calgary. And then we looked at Crime Prevention Ottawa, which is a police parallel organization, but works within the community, and looked at seeing how funds like this can go directly to community rather than go through police parallel organizations. We also looked at community services and seeing like where and how we can like fund community services. We looked at harm reduction services. We looked at services for queer and trans people. We looked at respite spaces. We looked at direct cash transfers and poverty reduction approaches. Again, all of this was collectively put together through groups that came together in Ottawa and thought about where and how they want municipal dollars to be spent. And again, this is an alternative budget. This is blue sky. At the end of the day, this is a powerful advocacy tool for enabling people in the city to go and talk to their representatives. And last but not least, we also looked at free transit, which is insanely exciting. And transit tends to be one of those costs that really compounds on everyday costs. So, for example, if there is a house that is paying $1,200 in rent, and they have 5 people that are taking transit and they're buying passes for them, that cost can compound. And Ottawa is particularly notorious because they don't even have a sliding scale for transit passes. I know Calgary does, which is amazing. And there was a time though when my own family was using them, and that significantly helped my parents raise 3 kids that were taking transit. So in Ottawa, we don't have the process of getting low-income passes. It's extremely strenuous, and it's a lot of paperwork. And most families end up just relying on one transit pass that they use across 4 or 5 members, and we've heard from families like that. So we looked at a model of providing free transit. Again, very specific to Ottawa context because it is denser, it is a smaller city. Calgary transit is a beast, and what is realistic in Calgary context is going to look different. Very quickly, what we also looked at different tax models, where taxes can come from to fund these kind of activities. We looked at vacant unit taxes, which again, vacant units tend to be a real problem in Ontario. Not sure what it's like in Calgary, but any properties that are held for speculation being taxed at higher amounts, and looking at what kind of numbers that can generate. So looking at stronger taxes can make a huge difference in the amount that can be invested back into community. We also looked at a progressive taxation model. I just don't have a graphic for that over here. And that's it. That's my talking. And if Aspen and Amber, if you can just tell me how much time we have left, we can just jump straight into the group brainstorming. Amber, Aspen.
Sorry, hold on. I'm trying to figure out one second.
Just found it, Aspen. So I think we have until 10:50. So I'm really terrible at math, but I think that takes us about 25 minutes.
Perfect. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I've kind of built this Jamboard for us to collectively use, and I'm just going to stop sharing my screen very quickly and share this link in the chat. But what I hope what we can do for the next 25 minutes is kind of identify what are key issues that we want to look at in Calgary. What are the current challenges that we really need a municipal accountability on? Where do we want to go? Where do we want to land? What are ideal scenarios of organizing, of collaborating, of working together in the city? And maybe identifying people that are already doing it, because I think one of the best tools available in community organizing is pooling resources, because it's exhausting to work in the community. Most folks are working on very thin resources, and the answer almost always is collaboration and working together. So in that case, I think it's probably really critical and important for us to pull that together. I did, by the way, also want to quickly mention, and I haven't done that in the graphics here, but part of the process that we took on with the alternative municipal budget was collaborate separately with Indigenous grassroots groups to build a budget that's particularly focused on urban Indigenous issues. And that was a completely different participatory process because their context tends to differ. And we worked with a specific grassroots group. So if we want to think through some of the issues that are like urban Indigenous, there is an opportunity as well to recognize what those specific contexts are that maybe currently aren't being worked on, aren't being thought about, and what are some of the ways to work towards that. So that's just a quick note that I also wanted to make before I headed into it. But the idea really is how can folks come together, identify issues that are important to them, and see where they want to go from here. And that's sort of the gist of the exercise today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, quickly share the link in the chat, but I open the floor now for folks if they have comments, questions, ideas, and then we can just kind of transition organically. So I don't know if folks have comments or questions, or if they want to say something, a burning thought maybe.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I love the fact that you added in the artwork in all the different places you went to. The lady with all the different scarves, beautiful. But I love the fact that it was graffiti in different languages. We don't get that in Calgary. We get like weird cats, but I really liked that.
Thank you. Yes. And, I was actually, it was a very soul feeding experience to be in cities where they recognize the diversity of the people that live in those cities. So, so many places in Barcelona actually had languages that were just not Spanish. They were, there was Arabic, there was, Urdu, there was Hindi, there was Punjabi, there was, Chinese and Mandarin, all of these languages and all of this diversity actually represented in public spaces, and it's so supremely powerful. And I hope that we can see more of that in Calgary as well. I did post the link in the chat. I see Anne's hand, so Anne, you can go ahead and folks can go, and I'll just do a quick tutorial on Jamboard as soon as Anne's done speaking.
Okay, and so thank you, Khulud. So amazing your talk, so loving it, and we so need it. My name is Anne Landry. I've been living in Calgary here for over 24 years. I'm a person of lived experience. I'm a long-term renter in a financialized landlord boardwalk REIT, just trying to survive, trying to keep my place affordable, that type of thing. And I'm also honored to sit on the steering committee of the Women's National Housing and Homelessness Network. We are at a pivotal time here in Calgary, especially since last yesterday, the City of Calgary Council passed the Affordable Housing Task Force motion that I am so disappointed in. We don't need a task force, we need a housing human right focus. So I'm really keen to learn how to link up with other people to mobilize from all different perspectives. And as you mentioned, Khulud, we have some financialization going on. It's really horrible because in Calgary, we don't have protection from provincial legislation. So we've got 40 to 50% turnover. So in essence, we're actually really much worse than in other provinces. What I'm hoping to see is in terms of greater accountability at the City of Calgary, is better data accountability. So we need a dashboard. That's the first thing, because housing human rights, you have to give the maximum of resources in the shortest possible time to the most vulnerable. And so we need a dashboard up there to see what are the budget items, how much are they actually spending on housing right now. We've had budget cuts to housing, that type of thing. And we do have the budget season coming up this quarter until November. So we've got a lot of time to work with it. I think getting the truth of what's been happening out also is so important. We've had a real flawed affordable housing program at the City of Calgary, yet I was distressed to hear it talked of as success. They have not met the goals. So getting the goals up there and having it legislated at the federal level, perhaps, to say, if you're getting funding from us, you have to put publicly available, the goals in 216 strategy. They had goals of meeting 15,000 to 22,000. That would be 2,000 to 2,500 per year. They haven't even met that. So some legislation in the federal level, because at the provincial level, we all know that we're not getting any help there. To have landlord ESG, this is really important. So for each landlord, whether it's municipal, public, private, they have to be legislated, I think, at the federal level to report every quarter publicly on average costs, average, on costs per rental unit, that type of thing.
And I was going to say, Anne, because you're saying like a lot of amazing information, if I can actually just channel that into the Jamboard to be actually recorded as well, that will be amazing, because I do feel like a lot of what you're saying is super powerful, and I'm sure that there's other folks that would want to work together with you on specifically the issue of housing. So if I can do a quick tutorial on how this is going to work, we can jump right into it.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So just very quickly to folks, I've shared the link for the Jamboard in the chat, and the goal and the idea is exactly kind of what Anne was doing right now, is thinking through what the important issues are, and then working together on. So Anne's highlighted how housing. There's 2 other slides that don't have issues highlighted, and folks can go in and highlight it themselves, and then essentially just going through these slides and seeing, writing in what are the challenges, where would we ideally like to go, and who's working on it. And we'll take, like, say, the next 5 to 7 minutes to write in our thoughts and like our challenges and brainstorm on these 3 boxes, and then we can come together and discuss as a group. So everything, and that you had said about housing, if you can actually put that on the Jamboard, record that, what we can do is hopefully other people can take a look at it, they can record their thoughts, and in the next 10 minutes, we can come back together and have this as a larger discussion, so that we're pooling in information and resources from all corners of this small breakout room. And I quickly wanted to say, folks do have an opportunity to add a sticky note. So you can just add this little icon over here, and it gives you an opportunity to add a sticky note. You can write if you have a tablet, it has a pen option, and then you can also type if you use a text box right in the corner over here. So there's many which ways to participate in the Jamboard, and if you have any problem, you can always add comments in the chat and I can add them for you as well. So the idea is, how do we, so Anne's already identified housing, so I've put that right on there, but there's 2 other slides for issues that folks would like to identify that they'd want to see work happen on, and then identifying what are the current challenges when it comes to getting accountability, where would we like to be, what kind of relationship would we like to have with the city government, and then who is already working on this stuff in the city, and if you know of any people that are working on it. So give folks like 10 minutes, and then let's reconvene around 12:45. Oh, 10:45. Sorry, I'm on Ontario time in my computer. 10:45.
So sorry, I'm just gonna squeeze in here. This goes from 10 till 10:40, so we have about 5 minutes.
Oh, we have about 5 minutes, not 10 minutes. Sorry, somebody said 10:50. Oh no. Okay, so how about we take like maybe like 5 minutes, and then we can go a little bit over time to do a group discussion, if that's okay. All right. just letting folks know there's one more minute. And if folks want to just, if people have ideas other than housing, you can always move on to another screen. So maybe I guess it's 12:40 and I'm aware of the time crunch, but I will just go a little over and maybe we want to come back together to talk about what are some of the things that folks brainstormed, what are some key issues currently that are impacting. And I see the housing one is the most populated one. I didn't see the other ones get populated. So we can most definitely talk about housing and what are the key challenges, where do we want to go, and who's currently working on it. So I'm wondering if somebody wants to get us started, or I can summarize things and then we can go from there.
Sorry. On the other page, there's a community services, and then there's like an emergency relief and natural disaster relief.
Awesome.
That also has a lot to do with housing. We had
Yeah.
in Calgary, we had the hailstorm, and then it took so long for everybody to get back up on their feet that a lot of people got evicted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when there was floods in, I don't know, it was 2014 or 2013. So many folks actually lost employment and had impacts on their housing that they suffered from for years. So absolutely. Thanks for that, Hannah. And anyone else on challenges that they see and where they want to be? Maybe I can read some off. So I see a lot of the stuff that Anne, you were saying you added in, and then I think there's some really important points about like what's happening at the municipality and how can we move further on to like provincial and federal government and get better protections within Calgary. I think that's a really, really important point. There's also somebody like, in terms of where do we want to go, somebody have written the ability for people living in social housing to be able to save, to move into market housing or home ownership. I think that's such an important thing. And increasingly we're seeing that people are stuck in the kind of housing options that are available to them, and they're not able to move past those housing options. And as housing gets more expensive, it's not just home ownership that gets expensive, it's rents that get expensive and keep people entrenched in having to be in the same place and holding on to the rent that they have for long periods of time. I see that folks have talked about wanting to get accessible, affordable housing that takes into consideration intersections and unique needs of vulnerabilities of Calgarians. I think that's a really important point. And in terms of looking at municipal organizing, one of the things that convening a group that convenes can do is look at what the current progress is how the needs of vulnerable Calgarians are being met right now, if they're being met right now or not at all right now. So that's something that can be focused on as well. There is also, as Anne was saying, there is a lack of tracking data. And what we find particularly in housing is what doesn't get tracked doesn't get addressed. So if you just don't know who's living on unlivable rents, who's living in inadequate housing, who doesn't have the opportunity to be in housing that actually meets their need, there is no way to address those needs. And oftentimes municipalities rely on not knowing so they can just absolve themselves of the responsibilities of actually making a difference and actually making a policy change happen. I also appreciate folks that have written in organizations that are currently working on all of this stuff. So there's Calgary Homeless Foundation, Be the Change YOSC, Calgary Housing Company, and Accessible Housing Society. And that's all really amazing because again, this gives an exercise like this gives us a sense of like what and where situation currently is at, where folks would like to go, and how we can be working together. I'm just wondering, and I always love having next steps, and I know we're crunched for time, but I'm just wondering as next steps, if folks would be interested, and I can always write my email as a follow-up, but if folks are interested in working together on something like housing as an issue, I'm more than happy to connect people in this group with a group that's working on a Calgary alternative budget, and then also a group that hopefully is working on housing as a human right. And I can write my email in for folks to follow up on. But I realizing that, in this short amount of time, housing did come up as one of the critical issues. It would be amazing to see more movement on it, and particularly see how Calgary can be more involved. So I'm going to write my email in the chat. I'm more than happy to share the Jamboard with CDNI, and they can share it with everybody. And I would love to follow up with folks that would like to be involved. So writing my email in the chat. And thank you so much for taking the time, everyone. And thank you so much for sharing the space and knowledge with me.
I'm so sorry. It's about to kick us out in 30 seconds.
That's okay. I am just going to write my email.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.